Today is June 13th, 2011, and today I no longer believe the United States is becoming a third world country. I believe the United States has become a third world country.
Restaurant brawl. This time, dozens brawling outside of McDonald's in San Jose, California. Now, you may not think this is important, but it is. The fight took place Thursday night at a parking lot outside of McDonald's. The crowd turned into a mob of more than 100 people, many of whom began screaming and yelling and throwing punches when the fight broke out. 5 people were injured, at least 2 people were stabbed. Police are not saying that it's gang-related, but they're not saying it either because gang members were involved. The motive, they say, may have been racial tensions.
Racial tensions? Among which races? Please tell us, Glenn.
A warm evening just turned into an all-out melee after a fun summer concert downtown. Oh, remember those warm summer evenings that turned into riots when we were a kid? Oh, good times. Apparently, word's out that the police have had cutbacks and San Jose is feeling the impact. Check out this local report.
Nearby businesses are frustrated because they say police ignored their calls earlier in the night when they called for help.
There was a fight before the stabbing, and there was a very small crowd. We notified the police department, and no police officer showed up for a couple hours, and then the crowd just kept getting bigger and bigger.
America, we have to have the courage to notice the insanity and stop it in our neighborhoods. We have to have the courage to notice the changes in our society. We have to have the courage and the moral backbone. Otherwise, we lose the underpinnings of a decent society. And when and if this economy begins to collapse here and worldwide, America will collapse. There are signs everywhere. This morning, I was on one of the I'm going to admit to you, I do read the economiccollapseblog.com. I do. But I want to show you, it's not a happy place, but I want to show you an article that I found this morning. 18 signs of the collapse of society is accelerating. There's also another 12 there, but you can read all about it. There is an alarm bell, and that's what these stories are really all about. The violence. Number 4 states this most recent Memorial Day weekend, cities all over America literally turned into war zones. There were reports of mass violence in Miami, New York, Chicago, Charlotte, Myrtle Beach, Nashville, and Boston, among other places. Then they point out something else that is disturbing and is happening here in New York, mob robbing. That's number 18. Quote, from coast to coast, mob robbing has become a very disturbing trend. So what is a mob robbing? Well, that's basically dozens of kids going in and storming in.
Dozens of kids
into a store together and grabbing whatever they want and then leaving. Recent examples of this have been caught on video in Washington, D.C., in Las Vegas, and here in New York. And have you heard about the violence in Chicago? I know this is getting some press coverage, but really? Their youth in Chicago is so out of control, tourists are now being told not to go to the Magnificent Mile, which is the city's primary shopping district. Again, they're not talking about the West Bank or sections of Beirut. We're talking about Chicago, Illinois. From the Wall Street Journal, quote, police here are girding for another weekend of flash mob attacks after arresting 29 people in connection with a recent rash of assaults and robberies in and around the city's shopping and dining district. 12 crimes involving large groups of young men were
Large groups of young men, that's how they identify them. So out of the entire population, we narrow it down to the fact that they are young and male, and that people who are young and male just somehow form groups. They form large groups. Now, when the media reports on something like poverty or cutbacks in a government social program, it manages to find out a lot more information about the people who are going to be disparately impacted. It will find, for example, that poverty and reductions in social services disproportionately affect black people. But yet, when it comes to crime, it could be the case that all of the people in these large groups are blacks, and yet the media just isn't able to put their finger on anything more than the fact that they are young and male.
In addition to others earlier this spring. The attacks have received wide attention in Chicago because they have occurred around the city's affluent north side, including near the Magnificent Mile, a Michigan Avenue strip popular with tourists. On Memorial Day in Chicago, there were at least 6 dead, at least 21 wounded in separate incidents. That would be, America, a terrible day for our troops in Afghanistan, but it's in Chicago. Last April, Chicago lawmakers begged for the National Guard. Fox reported, quote, 2 lawmakers who believe violence had become so rampant in Chicago that the Illinois National Guard must be called up to help. They made a public plea to the governor to deploy troops. The reason why I bring this up is because this is part of the preparation. We have just assumed that our children will be like us, but they don't have the foundation that we had. It's imperative that now, as responsible citizens who are awake, that we don't just sit in front of our TVs and say, yeah, or even better, yeah, well, we're America, and we'll always be America.
We. Who does we mean, Glenn? Your viewers? I don't think your viewers are the people who are committing these heinous acts in cities across the country. Who is the we, Glenn? Is it just us all as Americans who are allowing ourselves to become a third world country? Or is there some more clearly identifiable group within the American population that is to blame for taking the country down? From your reporting of the terrible situation afflicting cities throughout the country, all I can ascertain is that the problem is young men and kids.
We have to have the courage to notice the changes in our society.